The exile. The stench of burnt metal and charred flesh hung heavy in the recycled air of the Galactic Council chamber. Commander Cable Barnes stood at rigid attention, his battle-worn uniform still bearing the scars of the last skirmish. Around him, the varied members of the council regarded him with expressions ranging from grudging respect to outright disgust. "Commander Barnes," the Tsillian Chancellor began, his reedy voice dripping with disdain. "While we acknowledge your contributions to our recent victory, the Council has determined that your unorthodox tactics and blatant disregard for protocol cannot go unchallenged." Cable bit back a snarky retort. "You mean the tactics that saved your scaly hides? As such," the Chancellor continued, "we have decided to bestow upon you a special assignment. Consider it a reward for your service." The sarcasm lacing the alien's tone set Cable's teeth on edge. He knew a setup when he heard one. "There is a remote planet on the fringes of the Maelstrom Nebula, Vexus Prime. We need you to survey the surface and report back on any potential resources or strategic value." Cable frowned. He'd heard of Vexus Prime. The place was a nightmare, ravaged by ion storms, crawling with apex predators, and home to a few thousand scrappy settlers eking out a hardscrabble existence. It was the kind of mission you sent someone on if you wanted them to disappear. "I'm a soldier, not a damn prospector," Cable growled. "You are what we tell you to be," snapped the Archon of the Kayan Collective, his crystalline eyes flashing. "This is not a request, Commander. It is an order from the Council. You will depart within the hour." Cable's jaw clenched, but he knew when he was outranked and outgunned. "Understood," he bit out as he strode from the Council chamber. Cable's mind raced. This was a death sentence, plain and simple. The pompous worms on the Council might cloak it in fancy words, but he knew they expected him to die on Vexus Prime, lost and forgotten. Like hell he would. Cable squared his shoulders, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. If the Council wanted to play games, he'd show them exactly what a human was capable of. He'd complete their little errand and come back to make them choke on their smug superiority. It was time to show these alien bastards what indomitable really meant. Descent into hell. The hangar bay was a hive of activity as Cable prepped his ship for departure. He moved with practiced efficiency, running system checks and loading supplies. The sleek vessel, a heavily modified Raven-class scout ship, hummed to life under his touch. "Commander Barnes." Cable turned to see a young enemy hurrying towards him, her blue skin flushed with exertion. "What is it, Enemy Sora?" "Sir, I have your mission briefing." She held out a data pad, her slender fingers trembling slightly. "Is it true what they're saying? That the Council is sending you to Vexus Prime?" Cable took the pad with a curt nod. "Looks that way. But sir," Sora's voice dropped to a whisper, "no one comes back from Vexus Prime. The creature's there. I've heard stories. I'm not too worried about campfire tales, enemy." Cable fixed her with a level stare. "I've faced worse than whatever boogeyman the Council wants to throw at me." Sora swallowed hard, her gaze flickering to the jagged scar that ran along Cable's jawline, a souvenir from a particularly nasty run-in with a Vaean berserker. "Of course, sir. I didn't mean to imply." "Relax, kid." Cable softened his tone. "I'll be back before you know it. Someone's got to keep you greenhorns in line." A ghost of a smile touched Sora's lips. "Yes, sir. Good hunting." As the enemy departed, Cable turned his attention to the data pad. The mission briefing was sparse, just a set of coordinates and a vague directive to survey the area. No maps, no intel on the local fauna or potential hazards. The Council was setting him up to fail. Cable's lips thinned into a hard line. Failure wasn't an option. He'd faced long odds before and come out on top. This time would be no different. The journey to Vexus Prime was uneventful, the monotony of hyperspace broken only by the occasional blip on the ship's sensors. Cable used the time to familiarize himself with what little data he had on the planet: atmospheric composition, gravity, temperature ranges. It wasn't much, but he'd worked with less. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace on the fringes of the Maelstrom Nebula, Cable got his first glimpse of Vexus Prime. The planet hung against the starry backdrop like a bruised and battered fruit, its surface a mottled patchwork of sickly greens and muddy browns. Angry red storms swirled across its atmosphere, crackling with eldritch energy. "Well, aren't you a pretty little hellhole," Cable muttered, his fingers dancing over the ship's controls as he initiated the landing sequence. The descent was rough, the ship bucking and shuddering as it plunged through the roiling cloud cover. Lightning forked past the viewscreen, close enough to rattle Cable's teeth. He gritted his jaw and held the ship steady, his knuckles white on the control yoke. After what felt like an eternity, the ship broke through the lower atmosphere and emerged into a nightmare landscape. Jagged spires of obsidian clawed at the sickly green sky, their peaks lost in swirling mists. Fetid swamps bubbled and hissed, belching noxious gases into the air. In the distance, a range of twisted mountains loomed, their slopes shrouded in an eerie, pulsing bioluminescence. Cable brought the ship down on a relatively stable patch of ground, the landing gear sinking into the spongy fungal mat that passed for soil here. He powered down the engines and sat back in his seat, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. He knew the Council expected him to fail, to stumble blindly into whatever horrors lurked out there and never be seen again. But Cable Barnes was not a man to go gently into that good night. He'd faced death 1,000 times, laughed in its face, and spat in its eye. This planet, with all its terrors and mysteries, was just another challenge to be conquered. And conquer it he would. The Huntress. Cable rose from his seat, his boots ringing on the deck plates as he strode to the ship's armory. He suited up with practiced efficiency, strapping on his trusty plasma rifle and a bandolier of grenades. A wicked-looking combat knife found its home in his boot sheath. Every instinct honed over decades of warfare screamed at him to be cautious. His environmental suit sealed with a hiss, the HUD flickering to life, displaying atmospheric readings and life sign indicators. Outside, the day cycle was ending, casting long shadows across the blasted landscape. "Time to see what you're hiding, Vexus Prime," he muttered, cycling the airlock. The air hit him like a physical blow, hot, thick, and laden with strange spores that glittered in his helmet lights. Cable took cautious steps forward, testing the ground. The fungal mat beneath him quivered slightly with each footfall. Pulling up his scanner, he marked the coordinates of 3 potential survey sites within a 5-kilometer radius. The closest was a depression that might once have been an impact crater, now filled with a strange, shimmering liquid that emitted faint traces of an unknown radiation. Cable had covered barely half a kilometer when he heard it, a low, keening wail that seemed to emanate from the very air around him. He froze, weapon ready, scanning the landscape. The sound came again, closer this time, a haunting cry that seemed to peer straight through his helmet and into his brain. "What the hell is that?" he whispered, thumbing the safety off his rifle. Movement flickered at the edge of his vision, a flash of silver blue amid the twisted vegetation. Cable pivoted, tracking the motion. It was fast, whatever it was. Too fast. A shape detached itself from the shadows, uncoiling like liquid mercury. In the fading light, Cable caught glimpses of a sinuous body covered in iridescent scales, multiple limbs ending in wicked talons, and eyes, 4 of them, that glowed with an inner light like molten gold. The creature moved with a predator's grace, circling just outside the range of Cable's helmet lights. It was massive, at least twice his size, and radiated menace. "Well, aren't you a beauty?" Cable murmured, keeping his weapon trained on the creature. The thing stopped, cocking its elongated head as if considering his words. To Cable's shock, it made a sound that could almost be mistaken for laughter, a series of clicking chirps that sent shivers down his spine. "You understand me?" Cable asked, his curiosity momentarily overriding his caution. The creature stepped closer, its gleaming eyes fixed on Cable with unsettling intelligence. It raised one taloned appendage, pointing first at Cable, then at itself, then swept it across the landscape. "You're asking what I'm doing here?" Cable guessed. Another series of clicks, higher pitched this time. The creature moved again, graceful despite its size, keeping Cable centered in its gaze. "I'm not here to harm your world," Cable said, lowering his weapon slightly. "Just a survey." The creature hissed, the sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. It reared back, its scales flaring to reveal intricate patterns that pulsed with bioluminescence, a warning display, Cable realized. Whatever tenuous connection they'd established was broken as the creature launched itself at him with blinding speed. Cable rolled, barely avoiding the slashing talons. He fired a burst from his rifle, the plasma bolts illuminating the darkness in brilliant blue flashes. The creature screamed, a sound that threatened to shatter Cable's eardrums even through his helmet. It whirled, faster than anything its size had any right to move, and struck again. This time, one talon caught Cable's arm, slicing through his suit and into the flesh beneath. Pain exploded up his arm, but Cable embraced it, using it to sharpen his focus. He feinted left, then pivoted right, bringing his rifle up in a tight arc that caught the creature under what passed for its jaw. The impact stunned it momentarily. Cable seized the advantage, firing again, but the creature was already moving, anticipating his attack. It slithered between the plasma bolts with impossible agility, its body contorting in ways that defied Cable's understanding of physical limitations. "You're smart," Cable gasped, clutching his wounded arm. "Too smart to be just an animal." The creature paused, studying him with those unsettling golden eyes. It made another series of clicks, softer this time, almost contemplative. And then it spoke. Summa Mayan, the voice was like sandpaper over gravel, barely recognizable as speech. "Whyy here?" Cable's shock nearly cost him his grip on his weapon. "Holy shit," he breathed. "You can talk." The creature's scales rippled, changing color slightly in what might have been amusement or aggression, Cable couldn't tell. "Taik, yes," it hissed. "Huntress, Learnsis. You're the Huntress?" Cable asked, his mind racing with implications. An intelligent predator species, capable of learning human speech. The Council had sent him to a death trap, but they might have also sent him to the discovery of the century. "Huntress," the creature confirmed, slinking closer, its wounds already healing before Cable's eyes. "You, intruder." "Not by choice," Cable replied, slowly lowering his weapon. "I was sent here. To die, probably." The Huntress made a sound that might have been laughter again. "Die?" "Yes. All intruders die." Cable smiled grimly beneath his helmet. "I'm not so easy to kill." The Huntress tilted her head, golden eyes glittering. "See that? Interesting." Before Cable could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. The fungal mat split, revealing gaping chasms that vented clouds of noxious yellow gas. "Planet quake," the Huntress hissed, already backing away. "Run, humane. Or die now." Cable didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward higher ground, the Huntress vanishing into the growing darkness. Behind him, the landscape was being torn apart, the very planet seeming to rebel against his presence. As night fell on Vexus Prime, Cable found shelter in a cave high above the roiling landscape. From his vantage point, he watched as the planet tore itself apart and remade itself below, a never-ending cycle of destruction and rebirth. The wound on his arm burned with a strange fire, the Huntress's venom or something else working its way through his system. Cable administered a broad-spectrum antitoxin, hoping it would be enough. His encounter with the Huntress had changed everything. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting to understand, and maybe, just maybe, to forge an alliance that would make his return to the Council all the more satisfying. The alliance. Dawn on Vexus Prime came not with gentle light but with a sudden, searing brightness as the system's twin stars crested the jagged horizon. Cable woke from a fitful sleep, his wounded arm throbbing with dull pain. The antitoxin had prevented the worst, but the flesh around the gash had turned a concerning shade of purple. His suit's environmental controls had kept him alive through the night, filtering the toxic atmosphere and maintaining his body temperature. But the power cells were draining faster than expected, the planet's magnetic field interfering with the recharge cycle. Cable checked his supplies. 3 days of water, 5 days of emergency rations, and dwindling medical supplies. Not ideal, but he'd survived worse. A sound from outside the cave froze him mid-movement. Something large was scaling the cliff face, something with multiple limbs that clicked against the stone as it climbed. Cable raised his rifle, ignoring the flare of pain from his injured arm. "Come on in," he called. "The welcoming committee's ready." The huntress appeared at the cave entrance, her iridescent scales shifting color to match the stone around her. In the harsh daylight, Cable could see her more clearly, the segmented body, the 4 primary limbs and 2 smaller auxiliary appendages, the elongated head with its quartet of gleaming eyes. She was both terrifying and beautiful, like a living work of alien art. "Survived the night," she observed, making no move to enter the cave. "Strong. Takes more than a scratch and a little earthquake to kill me," Cable replied, keeping his rifle trained on her. "What do you want?" The huntress's head tilted, her golden eyes regarding him with unnerving intelligence. "Curious. Why they send you? What they want?" Cable considered his answer carefully. This creature was clearly intelligent, possibly part of an advanced species that had somehow eluded the Council's notice. Or perhaps the Council knew perfectly well what lurked on Vexus Prime and had sent Cable here as a sacrifice. "The Galactic Council sent me to survey this planet," he finally said. "They claim they want information about resources, strategic value. But really? They sent me here to die." The huntress made that strange, clicking laugh. "Council gnosis. They always know. Session many before you. They've sent others here?" Cable asked, lowering his rifle slightly. "Yes. Many. All dead now. Killed by you." The huntress's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "Sism. Moss die from planet. Vexus Prime kills all who do not understand. And you understand? Am of Vexus. Born in venom pulsus. Raised in death fieldus." She slithered further into the cave, her movements hypnotic. "You different from others. You fight. You survive. You interesting." Cable's tactical mind was working overtime. If the huntress was telling the truth, the Council had been sending people to Vexus Prime for some time, and keeping it quiet. But why? What was on this hellhole of a planet that was worth such secrecy? "The Council fears what they cannot control," Cable mused aloud. "What's here that they're so afraid of?" The huntress's eyes glittered. "Come. Says how you." Cable hesitated, weighing his options. Following an apex predator into unknown territory on a hostile planet seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. But his mission parameters, vague as they were, required him to survey the planet. And who better to guide him than a native? Lead the way, he decided, securing his rifle to his back but keeping his sidearm within easy reach. "But I'm warning you, I taste terrible." The huntress made that clicking laugh again. "Not eat you, human. Not yet." Comforting. They descended from the cave, the huntress moving with fluid grace over terrain that Cable had to navigate with careful precision. The landscape had indeed transformed overnight, new formations had erupted from the ground, pools of shimmering liquid dotted areas that had been solid the day before, and strange crystalline structures caught the light of the twin suns, refracting it into prismatic patterns. "Planet always changing," the huntress explained as they moved. "Life here must change too. Adapt or die." Cable's scanner picked up unusual energy readings as they traveled deeper into a valley that hadn't existed before the planet quake. The readings intensified as they approached a forest of crystalline spires that thrummed with inner light. "What is this place?" Cable asked, his voice hushed despite himself. "Heart of Vexus," the huntress replied. Where planet Spexus. The crystalline forest opened into a clearing where a vast pool of mercury-like liquid bubbled and swirled. Energy's cable couldn't identify danced across its surface, forming patterns that seemed almost intelligent. This is what the council wants, Cable realized. This energy source. More than energy, the huntress corrected. Consciousness. The planet thinks. Dreamses. Creatus. Cable stared at the pool, his scientific training battling with what his eyes were telling him. You're saying the planet is sentient? Yes. And more. Planet Creatus life. New species. New powers. The huntress's scales shimmered with intensity. Created my people. Created me. The council doesn't want to study this place, Cable said slowly, the pieces falling into place. They want to exploit it. Harness whatever power allows this planet to create life forms. Yes. Many come. Take Samplis. Take my sisterstus. All die in end. Cable's jaw set in a hard line. Well, I'll be damned if I help them do that. The huntress studied him, her golden eyes unblinking. What will you do, human? Cable gazed at the pool, watching the patterns form and dissolve like thoughts given physical form. An idea began to take shape in his mind, audacious, dangerous, but potentially brilliant. What if we give them exactly what they're afraid of, he asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. Not understand. The council sent me here expecting me to die, Cable explained, excitement building in his voice. But what if I don't just survive? What if I come back with proof of what's here, with you? The huntress's head reared back, her scales flaring. Go to Cestars. To council. To show them they can't just exploit this world, Cable said. To make them face what they've been doing. And maybe. He looked at the wounded alien landscape around them, beautiful in its terrible way. Maybe to negotiate a real agreement. Protection for your world in exchange for limited, supervised scientific cooperation. The huntress went still, so still that Cable wondered if she'd somehow shifted into a state of suspended animation. Finally, she spoke, her voice lower and more controlled than he'd heard before. Dangerous. For you. For me. Everything worth doing is dangerous, Cable replied. But I think we might just pull it off. The huntress's scales rippled in a complex pattern, colors shifting from silver blue to deep violet and back again. Then she extended a taloned limb toward Cable. Alliance, she hissed. Human and huntress. Cable reached out, clasping the alien appendage in his gloved hand. Alliance, he agreed. As their pact was sealed, the pool of liquid consciousness bubbled more vigorously, patterns forming and dissolving at increasing speed. Cable would have sworn the planet itself was reacting to their agreement. I think we're going to give the council one hell of a surprise, he said, a grim smile spreading across his face. The huntress's eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. Yes. And I will taste their fear. The return. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the massive doors swung open. Chancellor Velex, who had been mid-speech, froze as Commander Cable Barnes strode in. The human's uniform was tattered, his face weathered by exposure, but he moved with the confident stride of a conqueror. Impossible, breathed the Archon of the Kayan Collective, his crystalline eyes widening. Commander Barnes, Chancellor Velex recovered quickly, his reedy voice laced with artificial warmth. How unexpected. We had begun to fear the worst when you failed to report back from Vexus Prime. Cable's lips curled in a cold smile. Did you fear the worst, Chancellor? Or hope for it? Murmurs rippled through the assembled dignitaries. The Chancellor's scales flushed a deeper shade of blue. I don't understand your meaning, Commander. You were sent on a routine survey mission. Let's not insult each other's intelligence, Cable interrupted. You sent me to die. Just like you sent countless others before me. The chamber erupted in hisses and clicks of denial, but Cable could see the truth in their eyes, the fear. He raised a hand, and to his satisfaction, the chamber fell silent again. "I've completed my survey of Vexus Prime," Cable continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "And I've brought back something I think you'll find illuminating." He turned toward the doors and gave a sharp whistle. The assembled council members gasped as the huntress slithered into the chamber, her scales catching the light and refracting it in dazzling patterns. She towered over Cable, her golden eyes sweeping the room with predatory intensity. "By the void," someone whispered. "He's tamed a Vexian apex." "Not tamed," Cable corrected. "Allied with. This is the Huntress, a sentient being native to Vexus Prime. A world, I might add, that is itself sentient and capable of creating new life forms." The Chancellor had gone very still, his inner eyelids flicking rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in his species. "Commander Barnes, do you have any idea how dangerous?" "Oh, I know exactly how dangerous she is," Cable said, placing a hand on one of the Huntress's lower limbs. "I've seen her tear through solid metal like it was paper. I've watched her heal from injuries that would kill any of us. But she's not the real danger here, is she, Chancellor?" The Huntress's scales rippled with amusement, and she let out a soft hiss that sent several council members shrinking back in their seats. "The real danger," Cable continued, "is what Vexus Prime represents. A power source you can't control. A life-creating force you've been trying to weaponize. These are serious accusations, Commander," the Archon sputtered. "Without evidence." "I have all the evidence I need," Cable cut him off. "Including data logs from previous expeditions stored in hidden caches on Vexus Prime. Including tissue samples taken from the Huntress's sisters. Including records of the experiments you've been conducting." A deathly silence fell over the chamber. The Huntress moved forward, her massive form flowing like liquid metal as she approached the Chancellor's podium. Several security drones activated, weapons humming to life, but Cable raised a hand. "I wouldn't," he warned. "She could destroy every drone in this room before you could blink. And she's just one of her kind. Imagine an army of them." The Chancellor's gaze darted between Cable and the Huntress. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Cable stepped forward, standing shoulder to whatever passed for a shoulder on the Huntress. "We want a treaty. Protection for Vexus Prime and its inhabitants. No more secret expeditions. No more kidnapping and experimentation." "And in return?" the Archon asked, eyes fixed on the Huntress. "In return, the Vexians are willing to allow limited scientific missions, supervised and transparent. They understand the value of cultural exchange, of shared knowledge. But it will be on their terms." The Huntress's voice filled the chamber, startling those who hadn't expected her to speak. "We are not your weaponsis. Not your tools. We are Vexensis. Respect us, or fear us." The council erupted into chaotic debate, voices raised in argument and alarm. Cable watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. He'd thrown a plasma grenade into their carefully maintained power structure, and now they had to deal with the fallout. The Chancellor banged a ceremonial staff against the floor, calling for order. When the chamber finally quieted, he fixed Cable with a stare that mixed hatred and grudging respect. "You realize what you've done, Commander? The protocols you've broken? The balance of power you've disrupted?" Cable met his gaze unflinchingly. "I've done what you sent me to do, Chancellor. I've surveyed Vexus Prime and reported back on its strategic value. It's not my fault you didn't like the answer." A ripple of what might have been laughter ran through some of the junior council members, quickly silenced by glares from their superiors. "The council will need to deliberate on this matter," the Chancellor finally said. "Such a treaty would be unprecedented." "Take all the time you need," Cable replied with a cold smile. "The Huntress and I will wait. Right here." The Huntress made that clicking laugh that had so unnerved Cable when he first heard it. Now, seeing the effect it had on the council members, he found it deeply satisfying. Hours later, after heated closed-door deliberations that Cable could hear echoing through the chamber walls, the council reconvened. The chancellor looked like he'd aged a decade, his scales dulled with stress. "The council has agreed to your terms, Commander Barnes," he announced, each word seemingly painful to utter. "A formal treaty will be drafted, recognizing Vexus Prime as a sovereign entity with all associated protections." Cable nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. "A wise decision." However, the chancellor continued, his voice hardening, "Your actions, while perhaps justifiable, represent a clear violation of council directives and chain of command. You are hereby relieved of your military duties and stripped of your rank." Cable had expected this. He unclipped his rank insignia and tossed it onto the chamber floor with a metallic clatter. "Keep it. I found a new purpose." "And what might that be?" the Archon asked, eyes narrowed. Cable glanced at the huntress, who inclined her head in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "Ambassador to Vexus Prime," he replied. "Someone needs to make sure both sides honor this agreement." As they left the council chamber, the huntress moving with dangerous grace beside him, Cable felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was no longer Commander Barnes, dutiful soldier of a corrupt council. He was simply Cable, ambassador to a world of wonders and terrors, ally to one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. "They fear us now," the huntress observed as they walked through the stunned silence of the council headquarters, officials and citizens alike pressing themselves against walls to let them pass. "Fear is a start," Cable replied. "Respect will come later. Understanding, maybe someday." The huntress's scales rippled in what Cable now recognized as her equivalent of a smile. "You understand. First human to understand." "First of many, I hope," Cable said, squinting as they stepped out into the artificial sunlight of the station. His ship waited on the landing pad, modified now to accommodate his larger companion. "Ready to show me more of your world, Ambassador Huntress?" "Yes," she replied, golden eyes gleaming. "Much to see. Much to teach." Cable grinned as they boarded the ship. The council had sent him to die on an alien world. Instead, he'd found an ally, a purpose, and a way to strike back at the bureaucracy that had tried to discard him. Not bad for a mere human. The end.